This is a special video report on the Gambia's budget support from the European Union for the year 2020. In this report, we speak to the outgoing EU Ambassador on EU funding to the Gambia. Every year, the Gambia government prepares and approves a national budget which provides estimates of where the government expects to raise revenue and how they intend to spend it. Whenever the revenue exceeds expenditure, then government can save money or spend it on other activities. This is called budget surplus. This rarely happens. What normally happens is that government estimates more expenditure than revenue, resulting in what is called a budget deficit. This ultimately means that government needs to look outside its revenue base to fund its activities. This is where international partners such as the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, Saudi Arabia, China, and the European Union come into play. The Gambia re-established its relationship with the EU after President Barrow came into office in late 2016. After a very difficult relationship with former President Jammeh, the EU set the ball rolling when EU Commissioner Sana M Sambou visited the Gambia on January 2017.
The 2020 budget overview shows that the budget deficit for 2019 was $3.5 billion, while the budget deficit for this year is estimated to exceed $3.8 billion, up by over $300 million. In December 2019, Gynaco published a press release headlined, "The EU disburses 22 million euros of budget support to the national treasury of the Gambia." Back in July, I held an interview with the outgoing EU ambassador to the Gambia, Atila Lajos, where I asked him how much budget support the EU has in store for the Gambia this year.
We disbursed 9 million euros in April, which means it was already sent to the treasury in the Gambia Central Bank in April. We are disbursing 22.5 million euro in August. And we are preparing for an additional disbursement of 5 million euro in October.
So
these two, August and October, is not yet in the country. We are on 20-something of July. The 9 million was already disbursed. In total, this year, the European Union will have reimbursed 36.5 million euro as budgetary support.
The figures on your screen show what outgoing EU Ambassador Lajos informed us of back in July 2020. As we published this report in October 2020, the EU actually disbursed 25 million euros in October, and the only press release from the EU delegation in the Gambia was in a 2.35 million euros grant for a project implemented by UNIDO, which I haven't counted as budget support. It can be seen that the EU has provided over $2 billion in budget support this year so far, bearing in mind that the Gambia anticipated a budget deficit of $3.8 billion for 2020. This means that the EU has funded more than half of the Gambia's budget deficit. Of course, the budget did not include any allowances for the coronavirus pandemic. Nonetheless, this is without considering the $1.3 billion budget support announced in December 2020. We turn our attention to Hon Alhagie Mbow, the National Assembly member for Upper Salum and a member of Parliament's Finance Scrutiny Committee, FPAC.
EU, naturally, they have been a partner to the government of Gambia for too long. And I think they've spent, especially this new government, I think they've spent more than 200 million euros just to help this government in terms of budget support, in terms of infrastructure development, and in terms of this security service reform that we actually have. And also just to ensure that we are back on track. But I think they're doing their part as a development partner. Because if you look at the kind of products or the services that the Gambia actually consume from European countries, that's also ensuring that when we are stable, we means those things that are coming into the Gambia from Europe also, it has a tendency to also increase. So we must not also look at on the one side that EU is doing this for nothing. No, they're doing this for something. Because when Gambia is stabilized, look at the revenue, or look at the trade between the Gambia and the other European countries. Look at the trade. So that trade is actually in billions. So we mean when Gambia is stabilized, we means that trade that we have between the Gambia and the European countries is also naturally is going to increase in size.
A press release from the EU on 19th of October 2020 highlighted that the EU has provided to the Gambia 365 million euros in development funds during the period 2016 to 2020, and 39 million euros from the EU Emergency Trust Fund from 2015 to 2019. That's a total of 403 million euros that has been provided to the Barrow administration. This translates to 24.8 billion Gambian dollars. After conducting research on the cost of key infrastructure in the country, a consultant informed us that a 100-bed hospital can cost up to $300 million. $24.8 billion could erect at least 82 100-bed hospitals for Gambians. Our consultant also informed us that a 3-stream school could cost up to $150 million. $24.8 billion could provide over 165 3-stream schools for Gambians. From the EU funds provided, it can be seen that a significant amount of the funds have been earmarked to be used for coronavirus pandemic response. To better understand how the funds are impacting the work of frontline workers, we speak to the head of epidemiology and deputy incident manager at the Emergency Operations Center and Disease Control Unit. Back in July 2020, he mentioned that funds were not being spent wisely. We find out if things have improved since then.
It came at a time when actually there was no national coordinator or so, and also partner management was almost absent. Because partners also need to be managed, needs to be coordinated so that we don't have overlaps, we don't have duplicates in the spending of funding, otherwise that's going to be a waste. We had substantial delays in getting funding as we did, which led to some problems, of course. Yeah, so those problems actually were short-term problems, but they have serious implications as well, which we work very, very hard to overcome. And thanks to God, external partners also came in at the right time, of course. Some of them I can't say the right time, but they kind of intervene, and that also kind of alleviate the problem a bit.
So how does budgetary support actually work? Does the Gambia receive all the monies up front?
Let me inform you and your viewers about the methodology, what budgetary support really means. Budgetary support is not dispersed in advance to the partner country to do something. No. The budgetary support is discussed with the country, and it's a contract. The contract contains certain objectives or benchmarks, as you wish. Once the country achieves those benchmarks, fully or partially, then the budgetary support is disbursed. And from that moment on, it is up to the country to decide how they're going to use that.
There has been a lot said about the Gambia's EU budget support. Of late, some National Assembly members have complained that the EU is interfering in the Gambia's domestic politics.
It was something when we were dealing with the draft constitution. I've received something which is the EU and other governments that are actually urging the National Assembly to pass the constitution. For me personally, I was offended. Because for me, I think I know what is better for my country as a person. And I don't think there's anybody out there who loves this country more than I do. There is no country that loves the Gambia more than the Gambians. So in as much as they help us to stabilize, in as much as they help us to ensure that we have post-dictatorial country, which is a democratic institution, I think they also need to watch the way they interact with us in terms of where they put their mouth and where they put their feet. I think they need to watch that.
While on one hand, some National Assembly members are concerned about EU interference into Gambia's domestic activities, epidemiologist Sana M Sambou is more concerned with the government enacting an emergency fund for public health and environmental disasters.
I've been talking about this for quite a long time at every forum where I am invited to, or had the opportunity to be, even at the highest level, emphasizing the need for an emergency dedicated fund for the country, for public health emergencies. This country has no money set aside for emergencies. So imagine what will happen if an outbreak, especially outbreaks we are not prepared for, actually strike, like COVID. So only lives are going to be lost. If you perspire more in terms of peace, you will bleed less in terms of war.
When the Gambia commenced its transitional reform process in late 2016, its political leaders vowed to undertake a significant number of reforms. To this effect, significant amount of funds from the EU were invested into constitutional reforms, security sector reforms, transitional justice, and electoral reforms. In our interview with outgoing EU Ambassador Lajos, he urged me to engage the Ministry of Finance for the budgetary support contract.
Ambassador, what would you say to that? Is LGBT part of your demands are specific?
No, and it has never been part of it. We accepted the government's stand on this issue, and if you approach the ministries to have a copy of the budgetary support contracts, you will see there is no such. So these baseless allegations widely spread in social media is not something I am here to reflect on, because these are totally baseless misinformation. I believe those spreading such rumors, their awareness of the issue is reflected on their comments. It's totally baseless.
When I wrote a letter to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs requesting for an interview on EU funding to the Gambia, I was not successful. Nonetheless, it remains to be seen if the Gambia will continue receiving the funds it desperately needs to conclude its transitional period, and if the government will enact an emergency fund. At the moment, it seems the funding from the EU is still flowing, regardless of the fallout on the Constitution. To conclude, I must highlight that the EU has provided more funds to the Gambia besides budget support. This will be explored in more detail in our follow-up report. Yusuf Taylor for Gynaco Online.